Welcome to the regular council meeting for Tuesday, October 3rd, 2017. It's on Tuesday tonight because of Tour de Rock last night. And it was a wonderful event as the riders came through town. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of the Staminas people. And with that, we'll call the meeting to order. First item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes, additions? Councillor Arnett.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to add an item under new business with respect to UBCM and the resolution on legalization of cannabis.
Okay.
I want to introduce a motion.
All right. Any other changes or additions? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Arnett. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. No items to rise and report with this evening. Moving on to minutes. Item 4.1 and 4.2. Minutes of the special meeting of council held September 11th, 2017 are pages 1 and 2. Minutes of the regular meeting of council held September 18th on pages 3 through 9. Moved by Councillor Hutchins, seconded by Councillor Friesenhat. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Moving on to delegations. We got to get through the preamble so we could get to you guys, the exciting part of our meeting this evening. We have Alex Stewart from the Nanaimo Airport Commission and Mike Cooper, the Nanaimo Airport CEO. Welcome. And we look forward to the update.
Well, good evening, your worship, members of council and staff. It's a pleasure for me personally to be here for my first entities presentation. It's been almost 2 years. A lot of changes have been going on with YCD, and we're really pleased with the ongoing success and growth driven by our president and CEO, his extraordinary staff, and a board of directors who are eager to want to continue to support him. So without further ado, I'm going to call on Mike to give us a PowerPoint presentation on the status of YCD, and it'll open up for a Q&A.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is going to be a lot of fun, and we appreciate this. Next. Thank you. And what we're going to do is we're going to tag team it with the town of Ladysmith, so I appreciate that. The airport's been there for quite a while, and we've had a couple of conversations with the mayor and council here. We're going to do a really quick one, offer a little bit of an update of the passenger flow that we have at the airport and the infrastructure that we're building in preparation for that. Next. The airport is part of a larger structure. We need all of the infrastructure on Vancouver Island. We need Comox and Victoria Airport as well as Nanaimo. We need the fast ferries and float planes because we're on an island. In order to have strong economic conditions, we need a very robust travel system. Next. Our service area for the Nanaimo Airport is from Cobble Hill to Qualicum and over to the west coast, and it's some of the fastest growing regional districts in BC, and we're really seeing that now. Next. And we're also serving a number of businesses. Vancouver Island University is our largest customer with their students, the profs, and the family members coming, but we have a number of other businesses that we also serve, and it's important to be an economic engine to be able to serve those businesses in a very efficient way. Next. Our runway of 6,600 feet has a design aircraft of a 737-700W. The new 737 MAX 7s go as far as to Panama. So on the current runway, we can reach the Caribbean, Mexico, and Hawaii. Even though we're focusing mostly in Western Canada, as we move forward, you'll see additional flights to sun destinations and Eastern Canada. Next. With that, we've worked with S&C-Lavalin to look into the future for growth projections. 2 years ago, we completed the growth projections that you see here, low, medium, and high, with blue being the high projection. We actually sent them back 2 times before they gave this to us. And even though we did, because they kept the numbers too low, we're already still over the high projection. It's just been amazing, the growth that we've had. Next. In fact, if we look at other airports of similar size and in the region, we've grown about 108% since 2010, and the other airports have grown in the 20s at the most. So we're really seeing growth in the area, and you can see that even in the housing market. Next. The way to figure out what your passenger ratio is you take the number of people living in your primary service area. For us, that's Cobble Hill to Qualicum over to the west coast, and you put that against the number of people or the number of seats that you're selling at the airport, and you get a factor on the left. Next. The average for Canada is 3. Next. Victoria and Comox are just about 4 for their factor, which means that they're pulling people from outside of their primary service area. Next. And we're about 1.5. What that says is even though we're growing like crazy, we got huge growth because we're still underserving the people that are in our community. Next. And we're a strong economic engine. We're part of the economic engine of the transportation system. By 2021, we'll generate about 1,990 full-time jobs, direct and indirect, and about $358 million a year to the regional economy, direct and indirect. And that means taxi drivers and the works. Good man, he's making me rush, that's good. So the capital projects that we're building for that, even though there's about 15 capital projects we're working on, we want to talk about 3: the apron, the terminal building, and the ARF shelter. Next. The apron is where the aircraft park, and we've just finished expanding the apron. Next. Which means that we've paved either side of it. It's about an $800,000 job. Next. And we've been fortunate to get BC Airports Assistance Program. We look for federal, provincial, and regional money, and we've been very, very successful at that, at partnering with those areas. Next. We're also completing our 20-year design. The gray part of that box in the middle there is the current terminal building. The red outline is where we'll have the terminal building built to by 2034, and all the boxes are the modules that we're going to build in the interim. As we have the money, because it's capital intensive, and as the population, the demand is increased at the airport. Next. And then next again. So the first part that we're going to do, and we're starting this in February, we're going to break ground in February, is build towards that apron. Next. And build another component to increase the passenger lounge. Next. Next. So we're taking that current security area. If you've been through the airport, that's where we put the bags. Next. And that is going to triple in size. So we're going to end up having the capacity for 1,000 people an hour, because we'll have the checked bags go in the first one, and it will just be carry-on bags in the second part. But that's because we're building for 2034. The space will be there, but we'll only put in the lines as we need the increased structure. Next. Next. We're taking the same thing for the boarding lounge. The current boarding lounge has about 140 seat capacity. Next. We're going to go to 312 seat capacity. So as we go forward, that's only the first part of the expanded boarding lounge. When we need more, we'll be able to get up to 1,000 people in the boarding lounge in the future. But that's the long-term future. Next. And that is what it's going to look like from airside. When we do this next phase, it will look like a completed terminal building. Next. And we're currently moving the aircraft away from where they have been parked towards the east. They're painting that tonight so that we can move those lights that you can see in the picture out towards the future parking for the aircraft. Next time you go to the airport, you'll see that the aircraft are parked further out, and you can see that's the final build out for 2034. Next. And next again. As we look in there, when we go into the new security office, security area, that will be the perception. Next. We'll have one line, even though this shows 2, but we'll have the space to put 3 lines in the future. Next. And we'll do the same thing next on the passenger lounge side. This is going to be a very open and vibrant passenger lounge. And next, it will offer some eats and some treats on the air side too. So when you go there, you might even be able to get a beer on air side. Next. And we'll still have the capacity for customs in the current terminal building, and we'll build for the future for the bigger customs. Next. as we do this, every module that we build will look like a completed project, and so it will always actually be a real treat to the people coming to our community. Next. Next, that's final. That is what it's going to look like at the end. We're doing that now. Next. And it's a $14.2 million project. Thank you very much to Building Canada Fund. They're going to offer about $5 million. We're going to put in the rest. So we're not going to increase fees. We're not going to increase anything that's on airside, but we will make sure that we keep up with the increased demand. Next. Oh, good man. He said that's enough, Hooper. You're gone. That's all right. The next picture that you would have seen is the ARF shelter. We just completed the building of that. That's a fire hall. And we need to get a second truck, probably in a year, so you'll see more growth there again. And yeah. And the next slide that he would show is what we're building. What we're building, we finished the fire hall. We're going to finish the apron improvements in the next 2 months. Then we're finishing the terminal building that we're starting that component in February. We'll have it done by the end of 2019. And then we'll be expanding the parking again. You might have seen the expansions that we've done recently. And then we'll do a full second phase in about 2020. There you go. Very good. Yeah. That's right, that's right, that's right, that's right. Don't worry about it.
I want to see the last part. I almost get in there. Sorry, Mike.
That's right, I forgive you. There you go. There's the fire hall, and everything we do is modularized. We can actually put the next component on the south end and do another structure there very cost effectively. And if you bounce through those real quick, boink, 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 it'll go what I just said. Stop. One more. Right there. So we're really looking out, even though we have a 20-year plan, our focus right now is in the next 3 years. And the next one, and you're there. So any questions? Oh, there you go. It's done. If you have any questions, please let us know.
Oh, that was a real question.
And we do have an open house. I think everybody's got an invite.
Yep.
And that's for the 12th. Free food.
Well, thank you very much. That was a very quick and comprehensive, compressed version of some of the stuff we've seen at the entities meeting, so thanks for that update. I have Councillor Arnett, then Councillor Patterson.
It's not a question, it's just a comment. I just want to say, Michael, over the last number of years, you leading this project, I have heard from all kinds of people and observed you've just done an extraordinary thing in terms of it being an economic and social driver for the region, and it has really made us a place that people can get in and out of quite easily, and so congratulations on that work.
Well, on behalf of the full team, the board, management staff, contractors, consultants, we say thank you very much. There's quite a big team that's doing that.
I recognize that, but somebody's got to be the face of it.
Councillor Arnett, or Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wondering if the airport is envisioning any new partners in the way of airlines and other businesses moving out there or establishing there besides your own operation.
Yeah, that's a very good question. We have a new company out there right now called Alcan Air. Fabulous company. It's out of the Northwest Territories, out of Whitehorse. They're a medical evac company. If you go past the airport, you'll see a big new hangar called Alcan Air. They want to double the size of that because their business is booming so much. Older population. When we go on away, the province wants to bring us back if we end up in the hospital in the States or somewhere. So this is a company that does that kind of transfer. Really good. We have a couple other companies that are banging on the door. We have an announcement that's going to happen within the next 8 days on not a new air carrier, but interesting stuff. And we've got ongoing conversations with 2 other air carriers, so it should be fun as we unroll the future. It'll be fun to see what happens. Sorry?
FedEx.
Oh, FedEx. Yeah, sorry. I'm deaf. And
He was yelling, actually.
And Alex brings up a good point. FedEx started 3 years ago. In the first 6 months, they quadrupled. In the following year and a half, they quadrupled. And they're looking to, at some point, do a cargo facility. It's really a booming business. Everybody's starting to buy online.
Yeah.
I think something else that's worth mentioning is Mike's been involved with the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance Organization. And you heard at the last NNE's meeting that one of the things I'm very passionate about is foreign trade zones. We have 500 acres out there, but if you look at Vancouver Island as a whole, it's an extraordinary opportunity to bring international businesses to the island. We're currently going through a process where the federal government is giving consideration to recognizing all of Vancouver Island as a foreign trade zone. Stu Young purportedly is making a pitch to have Amazon on the north consider Vancouver Island. When you look at the lack of industrial land base in 5 years in Metro Vancouver, there'll be none. You look at the amount of ports and available land we have from Victoria through to Campbell River, there's nothing we can't accommodate. If you look at our educational post-secondary institutions for training skill sets, we can accommodate anybody if they're willing. Amazon is talking about 1 million plus square feet, 50,000 jobs over a period of time. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the communities of Vancouver Island can come together and make a business case that this is not only a wonderful place to live and work and is cost affordable, but it's an extraordinary place to do business. And thanks to Mike's leadership and an extraordinary group of business people in Vancouver Island that have been working towards that common goal, we're inching closer to hopefully getting federal recognition for just that. So, and your local MP is diligently working to get the organization in front of the federal MP caucus to lever that support as well. So lots going on beyond the airport, but thanks to this gentleman here and an extraordinary group of staff, that we need a face, as you suggest. He's the face and driving it all.
Thank you. Councillor Hutchins.
Thanks, Mike. I was impressed by your presentation. This was a wow one. One thing you didn't mention, though, is what is so visible to the traveling public is the dramatic expansion of your parking area. And to me, it's a really visible indicator of your incredible growth. So, are you gonna have any land left soon?
Well, that's a good question. We went through a process and mapped out the land for different uses, including parking with a company. And at some point, we're going to have to go up, or we're going to have to go off-site and bring people in. In places like Edmonton, they actually in Edmonton make more money off their parking than everything airside, everything, including retail and everything. So parking is quite a revenue stream. And we need it because we have about $110 million worth of projects over the next 25 years if we build all those different projects, including the road structure, the parking lots, all of that. So it's a capital intensive program, so you need that kind of revenue stream.
So in 2009, when we were announcing the big expansion, I think we only had the paved parking lot within the circle.
That's true.
So how many more lots or how many more parking stalls have you added?
Good question. We had about 300, just over 300. We're just over 1,000 now. And unfortunately, and I apologize, some of them are gravel, but what we're going to do is, because we can't afford to do the terminal building, the apron, all the other things, and make them all paved, we're going to put paved walkways in and lighted paved walkways in. So you just have to walk on the gravel for a little bit, and then you'll be on a paved walkway.
I think it's also important to mention, specific to the question, that YCD is working with Mike and staff to ensure that we maintain the lowest parking rates on Vancouver Island. So that's another important
It's always it's another draw to get more people through your terminal building and everything else. So I had a few notes, and you touched on some of them, so I'm glad you did, because that was actually at the trade show at UBCM last week, quite a conversation around Ford Train Zone, everything from the Port of Alberni talking to transloading and the airports, and everybody was waving that flag. So it is a fantastic economic opportunity for all of BC, not just for Vancouver Island. And the Amazon thing did come up. So there's a bit of a competition, it seems, between Stu and Lower Mainland, Greater Vancouver mayors on who's going to get that. But either way, there's great benefits to Vancouver Island, obviously greater benefits if that does end up in Langford. And the cost, I've been through this over the last couple of years, having gone to FCM 2 years in a row, and not only the convenience of the Nanaimo Airport, but when you compare ticket prices, if you go through the hassle of taking a ferry, getting to YVR, and flying out of YVR, you actually spend more money for less convenience than if you direct hop from Nanaimo to Vancouver and fly out. So being able to have that convenience, as well as a minimal impact on the actual overall flight costs when you're going to national or international destinations, whether it's for holidays or for business, is a really compelling case for us here. And although it is the Nanaimo Airport and I recognize where it's located, I would like to remind all investors and people looking to locate their businesses that we are the closest municipality to the Nanaimo Airport terminal.
Hey, Aaron,
yeah.
Mayor Stone, just really quickly on the cost effectiveness. A lot of times it's free to go from Nanaimo to Vancouver if you're going to Europe or
Yeah.
somewhere. And when you leave an airport like Nanaimo, you pay the taxes of that airport. If you go with Air Canada to Vancouver and then beyond, you don't pay those other ones, and we're the lowest
Way
tax.
cheaper. And
How
from a
did that
check-in
sales pitch in?
from a check-in perspective too, you clear all your stuff through in Nanaimo, and then you're on the plane and your bags arrive at your destination. You don't have to go through some of the melee that you get at YVR or some of the larger airports. So it's
I'm going to support the cost effectiveness. As I was in Ottawa last week, took a red-eye 575 return YCD to Ottawa.
yeah.
I had a puddle jump in Vancouver, but
Yeah.
the point being, I thought I was flying to Europe for that rate.
Yeah.
Pretty attractive.
Yeah, it's very attractive. And then same thing when I went to Ottawa for FCM, same experience. It was same price, but way more convenient. And to be able to be in Ottawa in 6.5 hours from here is a pretty compelling case. So again, thank you very much. I'm not sure. Oh, sorry, Councillor Frayden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, great report, Mike. I was just wondering, have you had any discussions with Transportation, Ministry of Transportation, with respect to serviceability on that intersection and stuff like that, to sort of enhance that with regards to traffic volumes that are going to be, once you do your expansion, and just to look at that serviceability of that intersection into your
Yeah, that's a
facility?
good question. Cal, what we did was we worked with the Ministry of Transportation to put it in there to begin with about 10 years ago, and it's far more used now. And what we did was we worked with them also to extend the southern pullout lane and to extend the speed up lane, the acceleration lane going north. But we are going to get a point at some point where we're going to have to put more infrastructure in there. We haven't talked to them recently about that, but we will. That's a good one to put on our radar.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I was just I was kind of wondering, because I know when you put that roundabout in there, I believe there was something to do with the handling of the additional heavy traffic, the industrial traffic through the Spruceton Road area and stuff like that. And I thought,
Yeah.
if once that you get your expansion in there, I wasn't sure about the availability of how that was going to fit into your development.
Yeah, no, good point. Spruceton Road and Vowles Road to go north have to come south, go through the roundabout to go north.
Yeah.
And that was, I think the last item that really made that happen was a van accident with those young kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it saved those kind of catastrophic accidents, so we partnered up to help with that. But you bring up a good point, and I'll bring it up with highways.
All right, so just last thing I want to say is being able to go to the entities meeting, and Alex is part of your board as well as your leadership there. I think you are generally blessed with a great team. The capacity and the attitude of your entire board and team, I think, is, you know, the success that you've had is no small part due to the team that you have there. Whether it's on the ground, which I've had experience with in other ways, but or in the boardroom and in the corporate leadership, you guys have got a great team, and the success speaks for itself. So good work, and we look forward to positive economic spin-offs for many decades to come.
Given the tardiness of the first entity's presentation by myself, does council have a preference as to how often you'd like to have a formal presentation and update on the status of ICT?
Yearly?
Once a year, twice a year? Do you have a preference?
I think yearly. Yeah.
Really?
I see nods around the table, so yearly would be good.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again for coming. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great night. All right, moving on. We have proclamations. First proclamation this evening is, and this month is item 6.1, Small Business Month, and we'll proclaim October 2017 as Small Business Month in the town of Ladysmith in the recognition of the determination, commitment, and contributions made by all businesses in our community. And you will notice there's an article in Take 5, as well as there'll be some blog posts coming out a little bit later this month on some of the benefits and challenges too of small business in a small community, and some of the things that we can do moving forward to benefit all of our residents and our people looking for work. That's page 10 in your agenda package. Waste Reduction Week, October 16th to 22nd will be Waste Reduction Week in the town of Ladysmith, and we urge all citizens to commit to environmental sustainability by conserving resources, and that's page 11. And page 12 is a special one, October 2017. Not that the other ones weren't special as well, but this one's especially special. October 2017 is Community Living Month in the town of Ladysmith, in recognition that a thriving community requires the inclusion and participation of all of its members. And Mark, I was happy to see that you came out tonight, and if you would like...
No, but I brought you guys a council form, and it has
That's
to be
right.
boxed.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely, and we're looking forward to you coming back, but we did have the original copy of the proclamation, and if you'd like to come up, I'd like to give it to you, if that's okay.
Oh. But they want you to fax it to them, saying that you guys proclaimed it.
Yeah,
Just-
we will fax it to you, but you made the effort to come out, so we wanted to make sure that we gave you the copy, and we'll fax the copy of this to them, and you can have the original.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
Thanks. Stand in front of the flags?
Maybe,
Okay, let's.
yeah, just in case.
Yeah, please. That's what happens when you run late from work. I get to wear Rob's giant jacket. Well, it actually fits me. It's 'cause I've got. we switched
Don't
up.
look in the mirror then.
Thank you.
All right, and moving on to, yes, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just going back to proclamation, Small Business Month, and you brought up earlier about, and so did the Airport Commission, about the popularity and the growth in Amazon and the push to try and bring all those jobs to our area. I hope when we have those discussions, we also look at the effect that it's having on small business, small local business. And these businesses are located in the heart and the downtown of all small towns. And there is an effect on those. So we love the jobs, we love the big business, but we need to take into consideration the small businesses in our communities as well.
Absolutely. So and we had a brief discussion and debate about it on Saturday night, but I think that's something we need to be really mindful of, working with the Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Business Association, about how we remind our communities of that. But we also have to recognize the realities of it, that these growths in those kinds of industries are because of consumer behavior habits. If the consumers weren't demanding that channel of goods distribution, then that growth wouldn't be happening. So having looked at FCM, not this last year, but the previous year, there were some good studies done that were presented about Main Street retail and how it survives in a digital age. So we can all do more as business owners to do a better job of using those tools to market our own businesses, becoming enabled online, and also understanding that just like malls and big box stores impacted small town retail in the 50s and then in the 80s, that the online consumer revolution, they call it, will have an even greater impact on all of those things. You see big box stores as well as small businesses closing, as well as malls being abandoned, and those are impacts of consumer behavior. So just like they said in the 50s and the 60s in Canada, more in the 60s, when malls became a big thing, populations doubled in small towns and they supported the same retail sector. And again, big box stores came along and populations in small towns grew and again maintained those same core businesses. And we're seeing that again as communities grow. The business community isn't keeping pace with the amount of residents in communities, and it's because of the change in shopping behavior. But there is a lot more that we can do, and I think that as we move forward into priorities for next year and the Open for Business projects that we talked about as being priorities, that we'll be able to address those more directly. So hopefully good news on some of those fronts over the next several months, but it does serve to recognize that we remind our community to try and shop local as much as they can. Thanks for that. Now moving on to development applications. Item 7.1 is the renewal of the temporary use permit for 614 Oyster Bay Drive, the Roundhouse Building and Compound, pages 13 through 16. And we do have a two-part staff recommendation that council issue a renewal of temporary use permit 3340-15-01 to permit use of the Roundhouse Building and Compound for the repair and restoration of Locomotive 11 and the Humdurgan at 614 Oyster Bay Drive. And number 2, authorize the mayor and corporate officer to sign the temporary use permit renewal. Moved by Councillor Arnett, almost by all council. Seconded by Councillor Hutchins. Discussion. Councillor Hutchins.
Through you to staff, so a temporary use permit can only be renewed once, but we do have an opportunity to make it 3 years. Not this time?
So, when this original permit was issued, the official community plan had a 2-year term to it, and so this was under that legislation. So it was for a 2-year term with a 2-year renewal. If we were going to change that, we'd have to do a new advertising. So we can't do it as part of this process because it wasn't part of the original permit.
So in 2 years' time, what needs to happen? If there's going to be continued.
Well, if it's something that council chooses to have as a use in that location, we'll have done the zoning, redoing the zoning by then, so
Okay.
it wouldn't be a temporary use anymore.
Thank you. Thank you. Makes sense. So just for clarification, we're going to be looking at a zoning process in the waterfront area, and that would be incorporated into that process. So if we can definitely get through it in 2 years, I hope. All right, moving on. Any further discussion on the motion? It's been moved and seconded. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Moving on to bylaws, item 8.1, zoning bylaw and official community plan amendment application 1132 to 1142 Rocky Creek Road, Ladysmith District Credit Union, J. Delu, pages 17 through 20 in the agenda package. And the recommendation is that we refer bylaw 1937 and 1938 to public hearing for after first and second reading, and extend the public hearing notice area to include the live work units at 1154, 1156, and 1158 Rocky Creek Road. Number 2, direct staff to review the CD1 zone and recommend modifications such that the regulations in the zone allow for appropriate site development in relation to the permitted uses and the parcel at 1130 Rocky Creek Road.
Move the recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Friesenhan. I'll take him that time. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. 8.1A, Official Community Plan Bylaw 2003, number 1488, Amendment Bylaw number 49, 2017, number 1937, pages 21 and 22 in the agenda packet. The purpose of Bylaw 1937 is to amend the Official Community Plan by placing the industrial land use designation and DPA 5 industrial on the following 5 subject property lots 1 through 5, District Lot 38, Oyster District Plan, VIP 84189, and those are our parcels 1132 to 1142 Rocky Creek Road. And the recommendation is that council give first and second reading to the OCP bylaw 2003, number 1488, amendment bylaw number 49, 2017, number 1937, and to refer the bylaw 1937 to public hearing, and that's pages 21 and 22 in the agenda package. Moved by Councillor Friesenhan, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. 8.1B, Town of Ladysmith Zoning Bylaw 2014, number 1860, Amendment Bylaw number 9, 2017, number 1938, pages 23 and 24 in the agenda package. Purpose of bylaw 1938 is to place the light industrial I-1 zone on the following 5 subject properties. Lots 1 to 5, District Lot 38, Oyster District Plan VIP 84189, again 1132 to 1142 Rocky Creek Road, and the recommendation is that council give first and second reading to Town of Ladysmith zoning bylaw as mentioned previously, and number 2, refer bylaw 1938 to a public hearing. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Friesenhan, and again, just to be clear for those at home or in the audience, these are just all part of the same package of work. Any discussion? Councillor Henderson.
I didn't notice my own little tag here, but on the bottom of page 18, which is taking you back a lot of pages, the fact that the letter has been sent to Staminas First Nation and no response has been received, has that got any implications to this whole process?
Not that I'm aware of, but just any comments from staff?
No, there's still time if there are comments to be received from Staminas, so it doesn't have an impact.
And my understanding is they often will not provide comment unless they have a concern. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Moving on to committee reports, I'm first on the list, and I did not have time to do a report this week, but I will do a verbose report with much detail, including UBCM at the next meeting. And you'll see items 9.3, Councillor Henderson's report is on pages 25 through 26. I'll just give councillors just a brief moment to give a highlight, but I think the idea of these reports were to put them in writing to make them part of the record and prevent our verbal reports. But I think, City Manager, as we go through this, I think the intent was we'll receive the reports, and then if there are questions about the reports, then council's free to ask the councillor who filed the report.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So any questions for Councillor Henderson on her report? Councillor Hutchins.
Well, I was going to move receipt of the reports, but I just noticed the newbies. The only ones that delivered.
Well, I'm a newbie too,
oh,
but
shoot, yeah, but
no, and I saw that myself, and I had a little chuckle. Sometimes old habits die hard, baby, and
good job, you guys.
I sometime during last week I panicked, realizing I hadn't got my report done, but I will endeavor to do better next time. So, no need to chastise. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't here for almost the month of September, so that's why, or you would have got a report. But as of today, so no time to do a report. The Canada 150 Legacy canoe will be going to Duncan to get painted, hopefully Thursday. I'll be taking it down. And Staminas is planning a celebration in their community center on October the 25th to unveil the canoe, the Canada 150 canoe, and the community will be invited. Mr. Postings and his staff are working with Staminas staff on it, and the goal is to have it permanently mounted hopefully by the end of October.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you. That's a good little item. Is there any other discussion on the reports? Councillor Hutchins has moved receipt of the reports. Can we get a seconder, Councillor Arnett? And would you like to speak to one of the reports or have a question?
Well, it's been confession time, so I should eliminate my confession time. I actually reported out on the library board budget last week. Nothing else has actually happened, so.
In your defense.
In my defense.
Well, I have a poor excuse with no defense, and we'll just let Councillor Hutchins let that burn for a bit. Any further discussion? We'll receive the reports. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you for that. Now we're moving on to bylaws. Item 10.1, Town of Ladysmith Subdivision and Development Servicing Bylaw 2013, number 1834. Amendment Bylaw 2017, number 1932, and this is to amend the Subdivision and Development Servicing Bylaw to allow for reduction in standards for single-family developments in existing neighborhoods to match existing standards of the neighborhood. And the recommendation that Councillor Hutchins has already moved is that Council adopt the Town of Ladysmith Subdivision and Development Servicing Bylaw as seen, pages 31 through 33 in the package. Seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Correspondence, item 11.1 of Alex Cook Festival of Lights for waiving the trolley rental fee, page 34. And that is a recommendation that council direct staff to waive the fees for use. Pardon?
Should, as the president.
Yes. Well, are you
Okay.
assigned by council? No.
No.
No, then you should excuse yourself for your conflict. Now we can have a real discussion. The council directs staff to waive the fees for the use of the town trolley and driver from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Thursday, November 30th, 2017 for light up as requested by Ladysmith Festival of Lights in their correspondence dated September 14th, 2017. Moved by Councillor Arnett, seconded by Councillor Hutchins. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. And to be clear, Councillor Patterson declares conflict because he's the president of the society. Item 11.2, Linda Castle, Town and Country Mobile Home Park, waiving of trolley rental fees, page 35. And the recommendation is that council not waive the fees for the use of the town trolley and driver on Sunday, December 10th for the Town and Country Mobile Home Park Social Committee dinner at the Eagles Hall as requested by the Town and Country Mobile Home Park Social Community in their committee in their correspondence dated September 21st, 2017, as the group is not a registered not-for-profit.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Hutchins, seconded by Councillor Henderson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. And new business, Councillor Arnett. UBCM legalization of cannabis resolution or general discussion? And a motion to follow, I believe.
Mayor, Council, as you know, one of the major resolutions on the floor at UBCM was related to the points that the local governments wanted to provide to the
Sorry.
There's two recommendations from the committee to cost. No, they are in the oh, okay.
so well.
Sorry, Councillor Arnett, we can finish with this and then we'll come back to the other items that were missed.
So just to start over again then, at UBCM, one of the major resolutions was municipal recommendations, 4 points to the federal government with respect to legalization of cannabis that was coming in July. One of the things that I thought was missing, and a number of other people did, was a point on making sure that safeguards were there with respect to particularly edibles, but safeguards in general in regulations for children and youth. And as a result, I spoke at each and every one of those meetings around that resolution. And when it came to the floor, I put forward an amendment, and the amendment read this way: that the UBCM delegates request the federal government to ensure there's adequate, meaningful, standardized safeguards in place to protect children and youth, consistent across federal, provincial, and municipal regulations with respect to legalized cannabis. That amendment went to a vote, and it was about 60-40. Maybe I'm exaggerating, it might have been 70-30, or 67-30. So there were a number of people who came up and felt that very strongly that that is a piece that's missing. And so I would like to put a motion to the floor or to council that we as a town write a letter to the Prime Minister and the Minister responsible for the cannabis legislation, copied to the BC Minister Mike Farnworth, to be included in the province's public consultation record, that we strongly request that there's adequate, meaningful, and standardized safeguards in place to protect children and youth, consistent across federal, provincial, and municipal regulations, which was really the issue around this.
Just to keep it clean, that was the end of the motion?
That was the end of the motion.
So that's so moved. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Patterson, thank you. And continue.
And so really the issue is not against legalized cannabis. It's coming, and what we want to do is make sure that it comes in a way that particularly municipal government can handle. If there are consistent regulations across 3 levels of government, it makes it very easy for us around bylaws, around protecting kids and youth. And I think that very many, a large number of people feel that that is the piece that's missing. They're not necessarily against the timing. They're not necessarily against legalized cannabis. They're against doing something and imposing it and then trying to catch up later. So I'd like to make that motion that a letter go forward. And thank you very much.
Thank you. So it's moved and seconded. Councillor Hutchins.
So, is the sending the letter as part of the motion?
The letter, the motion was to send a letter indicating the items that he had said there, that we're requesting that they include those things.
But through you to Councillor Net, did you just mention 2 people that we're writing to? Mike Farnworth and the Prime Minister?
I said that we would write to the Prime Minister, Councillor Hutchins, write directly to the Prime Minister, copy to the federal minister responsible for cannabis legalization, and copy in Minister Mike Farnworth here in BC to be, so that that letter is included in the province's public consultation record, which is taking place, in which he announced at UBCM.
At UBCM, yeah. Thank you. So, not directly to the motion, but on the activities of UBCM, I do want to say to our council and our community that you spoke very well, not only in the policy sessions, but in the resolution sessions about the issue, and we had a bit of a conversation about it. And for somebody who'd been quite on the Liberal side of the fence, if you will, not in terms of the party, but in terms of the policy, and having a teenager starting grade 8 this year, you know, it forced me to reevaluate my positions on legalization, and especially towards edibles. And I've learned a lot through that sort of investigations myself, and I think that I appreciate the balanced and pragmatic approach and conversation that you gave, and in the debates and the amendments that you put forward. And I think that it really represented our community very well. And I will say that however the resolutions themselves actually turned out, you know, there's some people that say it's not our business, stay out of it, but I think your motion here to make sure it's included as part of the consultation record is really important. And I think that as municipal people, we know what a hot button topic can be. We've gone through some of these issues around bylaws, and having more instructive and constructive advice from the federal and provincial government makes our jobs easier, and doesn't sort of offload that responsibility of care directly on our shoulders, and allows us to provide good policy when it comes to land use and bylaws of that nature. So I just want to say thank you for all the work you did at UBCM. And I will say that both in my own photographs that I shared on Instagram and stuff of you speaking at the microphone, and UBCM's own photographs, you made an impression on people there. Some of the best photos I have, but I will say that you seem to dress for the occasion. And one you're wearing a t-shirt and jeans, and the next one you're suited up. So whatever the occasion was, Steve was well prepared for it. And I just want to say thanks on behalf of our council and the community for the work that you did there. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Oh, yeah. Councillor Henderson.
I haven't been keeping up with all of the messaging that's coming out, but is it 19 is the age of
the recommended age so far?
Yes. And what were some of the specific things you foresee as being entailed when the federal government would respond, as to what other limitations you would want to have on the sales?
Well, I think speaking both for myself and some of the other people I've talked to, it's that this is going to happen, and the issue is readiness, and the readiness is about and some people spoke very passionately about it, some mayors, especially in smaller communities. We've been working on trying to set a zoning regime and a bylaw regime in which it's not that we're saying it can't and won't happen, because it is going to happen, but we want to put in the best protections we can We have spent thousands on staff time, countless hours of council time trying to set up regulations, and we still don't really know what's coming. So we may find when the legalization comes, that nothing fits. There's no continuity, if you will, between what the federal government's put in, where the province is at with regulation, and then of course with the municipalities. And the fear is that then it really becomes downloaded on us. Whereas if the government makes sure that they have legislation that comes forward that really makes it easy for each level of government in sequence to make complementary law, if you will, in statute, then we'll have not a perfect system, but we'll have a system that will be efficient, effective, cost less, and quite frankly will deal with lots of the controversy. To a person, what I hear from folks is that the evidence, and Dr. Perry Kendall spoke very comprehensively about the report, the protection and safeguards for young children, particularly around edibles, and for young people and youth up to 19, which is the age, is a very significant concern because of the very clear evidence of brain development. And so it's not a reactionary perspective. It's one where people are looking for some kind of consistency, and that's what my amendment was to try to do.
Just to quickly add to your point, it was about readiness and the impact on smaller communities in terms of capacity, and just being more descriptive and prescriptive in what is or isn't allowed. So they do a lot of regulation around liquor, for example, and making sure that those parameters were clear and well defined in senior law, so that it allows it more straightforward for municipalities to adopt the business license and zoning requirements to comply with those, as well as, sort of protect the communities, right?
So I am aware of the neurological problems and also the taking of other drugs and awful ramifications around that. But it was just anything that I've read has left it very wide open as to which level of government may or may not be in charge of it. So you're really trying to firm it up so that there are guidelines regardless of what those initial statements came out to be. Thank you.
And that was, a perfect way to put it in a nutshell, is that communities were saying you can't leave it up to municipalities to determine those things. You need to give a framework that we can work within. But, we can always strengthen it, but again, they need to be descriptive and prescriptive about how it's done. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. And we do have to come back to the reports because it wasn't maybe for our agenda, so if there are recommendations, we can highlight those in the agenda in the future. So we've missed a couple recommendations for resolutions from the reports from the committees.
Yeah, that's correct, Your Worship. And if you pay attention on page 25, you're going to see a recommendation from the committee that council may consider tonight.
So the recommendation for council, page 25, is that council receive a delegation headed by Jane Osborne, Community Resource Network, to present a walkability study. So that could be done through our delegations process?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So have they been instructed to make a delegation then?
No that I'm aware of, but if you pass this resolution tonight, we will.
Okay, and that council support a UBCM age-friendly grant application. And I presume that Councillor Henderson would move those two items? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Henderson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hutchins, any discussion on those? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. And the next one is on page
29, Your Worship.
Yep.
In the back of the page and on the... No, just only the bottom of the page.
28. Top of page 28.
Oh, sorry. Top of page 28
there it
first.
A recommendation for council, and this is from Councillor Friesenhand's report, is that council ask the province for signage indicating Ladysmith when driving up from Victoria. Okay. Are you talking about on the ones that show the distance too?
That's correct.
I had this conversation. I drove back from Duncan. I saw 3 of them, but maybe it's between Duncan and Victoria.
There's one north of Duncan.
They were asking for Victoria, from
Victoria up to here. Okay, so that would be, I assume, moved by Councillor Friesenhan. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Henderson, any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Thank
Vote
you
on
for
page
that.
29.
Yeah, and then I was going to say there is one more here, and the recommendation from Councillor Fraden's report is that council consider limiting parking on 2nd Avenue between Buller Street and Simon Street and place caution and speed reduction signage on 2nd Avenue. So Buller to 2nd is that part that has some topographic challenges, if you will.
That's good.
Well, it's like a little mountain range when you're driving down it, right? So, and so, Councillor Fraden, you move that?
Yeah.
Okay, and do I have a seconder? Councillor Patterson and Councillor Fraden.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the staff report that came out at the Protective Services meeting was that the surface, the driving surface, is very limited, and it's the inability for 2 cars to pass safely on there. So when there is a car parked there, or when there's people walking there, there's this you get this conflict. So, and it's been brought up as a safety issue, and I did visit the site myself, and you can see it there. So I think it would help with the mobility on there.
So just to clarify, because it says council consider, so we'd say council direct staff to bring back a report on limiting parking between 2nd Avenue between Buller and Simons. Would that be more appropriate?
Your worship, we can, if council is okay by limiting the parking, then just give us direction to do so, and we'll just
Okay.
go ahead and do it.
The council direct staff to limit parking on 2nd Avenue. So if that's good to the mover and seconder, yeah. Any further discussion? Councillor Henderson.
Are homeowners parking out there habitually?
Yeah, I can't speculate, but from what I've seen, it seems to be habitual, same cars when I used to live the block above there. But they do seem to have off-street parking, but I think the safety takes priority until we can address the more challenging engineering issues on that stretch. All the way down to Simons, there's some, as staff has reported back in the past, there's some engineering work and stabilization issues that need to be addressed all along that roadway. So, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. And those are the resolutions from the reports. Thank you. I was got in such a good groove there. We were rolling along. Apologize for that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. And the next item on our agenda is question period.
I don't have a question, but I'll give a report. I was at the emergency management meeting, and I noted that staff were busy with other duties, so I'll report out what we discussed at the emergency management meeting in CVRD. We discussed mostly the radio communications that took place with all the groups in the firefighting.
I think we'll give you the latitude, but usually that's not what question period is for, is for reports.
I'm just letting you know what transpired there, because I sit on that board as a member of the search and rescue.
And was it that our staff...
town reps normally are there.
Right.
So I can just fill you in as to what transpired.
Okay.
Which we discussed, the radio communication, they had some serious breakdowns with
I know the contractors
heading into the sites and then not being able to communicate because of radio frequencies. Some are restricted, etc. So all the firefighters, of course, and the Forest Service are working towards aligning those items. And in the new year, we'll be discussing and probably doing tabletop exercises to deal with flooding. This year, firefighting took up a lot, and we'll be reviewing the things that went well and things that did not go well, and come up with recommendations for that. But primarily, it was about discussing radio communications. So.
Yeah, I actually, I heard that the contractor's been up here doing work on the radios actually in our town, because somebody I know who knows them said, where can they stay? So they're doing some work on the towers here and have been doing some upgrades. The service is provided through the CVRD, through the regional. It's not a municipal function. Yeah, I know at the CVRD level there's been budget discussions around improving the radio towers. And that's been, I think, a preliminarily approved after some upgrades last year. And it's good information, though. Thanks, Bill.
You're welcome.
All right, then. I knew I was waiting for you, but
Robert Johnson, 526 First Avenue. On page 1 of the agenda, in the special minutes of the special meeting held on September 11th, there's a RISE report. Just a second.
yep. It was on, but until you just shut it off. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, there was a RISE report on the motion to approve a 5-year agreement with Catalyst Paper for the disposal of the town's biosolids at a cost of $1,100 per bone dry ton. The motion was passed, and the RISE report gave no details as to any debate.
The Horizon report, the minutes show the resolutions that are passed and how the vote went.
Okay. The motion was passed in closed session under the provision of the community charter, specifically sections 91E and 91K, which allows council to conduct business in closed meetings if certain conditions are met. Section 91E-K reads, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provisions of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages, and that if in the view of council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public.
Mm-hmm.
The motion was to approve a 5-year agreement with Catalyst Paper. This suggests that the town was not at the preliminary stage regarding this contract, and it doesn't appear to be a municipal service, as that the service will be provided by Catalyst Paper and not the town.
So,
If I may finish the whole point.
No, but if
I'm
you'll
giving
ask a
background-
question.
I'm giving
No, but you're
background to the
making
question.
suppositions, you're not asking a question.
Well, no, I'm leading to the question, if I may.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, under section 91E of the charter, it states that the acquisition and disposal or expropriations of land or improvements, if council considers the disclosures could be reasonably expected to harm the community. Could it be said that the council believes that the biosolids are an improvement, as none of the other conditions apply? So this leads to my question. What part of the motion to spend the public's money to dispose of the town's biosolids over 5 years at an unknown final cost justifies debating and voting on this motion in a closed public session rather than in public?
So I'd have to move the legislative items to staff, but I will respond in that that was the first time that we had heard about the agreement that came forward on the biosolids, so it was the preliminary, but council was able to make a decision based on the information they received. The provision of the municipal service that was required under that was the provision of wastewater treatment, and the requirement under the act to dispose of the biosolids required in the provision of that service. And the 5-year agreement, that's why Roseworth report at that meeting, the 5-year agreement is a backup for the biosolids facility.
I appreciate
and
that.
that's why it's a high amount. If you look at the cost of actually having to do that for all of our biosolids, we wouldn't be able to afford to do that. That's
That
a
is
backup
what-
for,
That is why I have supplemental questions that I'll give to staff,
Yeah.
asking for more details on it.
yeah, but as far as the provision of the legislative framework that was done under, that would have to be referred to staff.
Right, because as I say, it appears to be approving a contract that was negotiated, and I don't see how that would harm the public interest. if it
And
was
that's
done
why
public.
we Roseworth report at that meeting.
Yes, but after the fact, I believe from transparency point of view, that it was a topic that could have been.
But
at the
if
discretion-
council-
At the discretion of mayor and council, that it was not.
You're not
gonna
here to
harm.
make opinions, you're here to ask questions, and if you would let the chair respond, it would be appreciated. So if you could just let me respond.
Okay.
Council had not heard about that negotiation. We could have directed staff to go back and recommence negotiations. It was the preliminary and very first time council had received that information. We made a decision that night, so we decided to rise with the report in the interest of transparency. The provision of the municipal service was the disposal of biosolids, which is required under our wastewater treatment plan. The 5-year agreement is a backup for our wastewater biosolids composting facility. And the reason that we highlighted the cost was because of the extreme cost if we had to continue to dispose of our biosolids outside the community. That gives some perspective on the value that we've provided through the biosolids composting facility that we're building at this time.
I don't disagree with you.
Thank you.
The only point
This
I
is
would
not a
like-
debate, Rob. That's
Okay.
according to the rules.
Okay.
You're always respectful of the rules, so let's keep it that way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions from the audience? Seeing none, I'll get a motion to retire into closed session. Moved by Councillor Arnett, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.